Hello, everybody. My name is Alex, and I work on the support team here at Tripleseat. And I'm going to be walking us through today's webinar having to do with settings. I'm going to give it maybe one more minute before we get started, and then we're going to kick off today's training. All right, I think we have everybody. Okay, so welcome everyone. Again, my name is Alex. I work on the support team, and I'm going to be walking us through today's webinar, Settings 2, which talks about performance tools, billing configuration, and how you can customize your documents in Tripleseat. Before we get started, I just want to point out that microphones will be muted for today's call, but I would love to hear your questions as you have them. You should see a Q&A section of Big Marker, so feel free to drop in your question as we go along, and I can answer those. The specific features we're going to talk about more today include automatic tasks, fiscal periods, and sales goals. We're going to look at your billing details, menu item categories, and pick lists, so everything having to do with billing. And then we're going to look at document customization. So we're going to check out document templates, document layouts, as well as content templates. The topics we're not going to cover today, but will review in the first call of this series. So this is actually a two-part series that dives deep into settings. So this is Settings 2. In Settings 1, we talk about preferences, locations, users and user roles, the file library, email templates, and also pick lists. So if you're only interested in one of that second bucket of features, my feelings won't be hurt if you jump off the call today, because we are not going to discuss those in those, like the second bucket of features I just mentioned. Okay, so we've got a lot to review, so let's just jump in. My page is open to settings, but you can obviously navigate there from your own website by clicking settings in the lower left of your sidebar. And the first feature we're going to talk about, which I really think of as an organizational tool that can help your team execute. The first feature would be automatic tasks. So those are right here. As their name suggests, automatic tasks operate in Tripleseat using an if-then logic. And so if you already have some tasks created for your group, you would see them here. And just from this overview page, we can tell a bit about the tasks that already exist. For instance, we can tell the trigger action that will cause a task to generate. We can see when that task will be due from the due date column. This is a really exciting new feature. We've rolled out an option where you can make auto tasks specific to just a type of an event, like a wedding, or to an event style. So for instance, at a glance, I can see this finalized ceremony timeline that only exists for events that have the type wedding. All right, so let's click the new automatic task button in the upper right, because perhaps a really important milestone in the event planning process for you guys is finalizing menu selections with your guest. So from this page, the new automatic task, we want to provide a name. This is what would appear on the page before. Finalization. And underneath, you'll find the trigger action dropdown. And so this will be where you can select what needs to happen in order for this task to generate. Maybe I have a lot of events that get created, but not all of those, right, take place. For that reason, I might want to choose the event trigger, event status changes to definite. The reason I like this is because at that point, I probably have a paid deposit and a signed contract, so it's likely to occur. And I'm not clogging up my tasks section with a bunch of menu finalizations for events that are actually going to fall through. If I wanted to make this specific to a certain type of event, I could use these 3 dots to expand event types, right? I'm going to select all because perhaps I need to do this for all types of events, maybe not breakfast actually, and maybe not a virtual event, but everything else for sure. And then also event style. Maybe I only need this for my on-premise and full service catering events. You can minimize those using the 3-dot buttons. Next, you need to assign a due date. So when this task gets created, perhaps I want this to be due 2 days or 10 days. But instead of being 10 days after the trigger action, I want this task to appear as due 10 days before the event date. So in order to change that, I'm just using this dropdown that says trigger action to choose event date instead. And then I'm going to go to this dropdown to make it so it's before the event date. Maybe finalize selections with guest. The task body is what's going to appear in the tasks tab on the event in question. So I like to make that a call to action. In the right-hand column, there are a few more things we need to do. So first, we need to select which locations should this task exist at. I'm going to just select all 4. There's also a Smart Task Assignment dropdown. And so this will determine who this task belongs to and who owns marking the task as complete. I like the Smart Task Assignment because it's really flexible, right? I might have a huge team of event planners. And so obviously, if Joe Schmo owns the event, I want him to get the task. But if my friend Katie owns the event, she needs to be in charge of finalizing the menu selections. So this is just a flexible option, and you can set that to owners, the managers, or owners and managers, or else current user. I feel like I most frequently do the event owner. Another option would be to set the task assignment manually. So this would be if Betty always owned finalizing menu selections, I would check off her name. Now in this case, I want it to be flexible, so I'm not going to do a manual task assignee. But a good example, perhaps your accountant is a Tripleseat user and she likes to check out all payments that get marked as paid. What you could do for her, you could set the trigger action to event payment paid, and then you would make the Smart Task Assignment none and just check off her name, because that way, anytime a payment gets marked as paid, Betty would get the email letting her know about that action, and she can mark the task as complete after she's reviewed the transaction. All right, and then when you're done, you're just going to click Save. So now anytime that trigger action occurs, event status changes to definite. This menu finalization task will appear on the event in question with a due date 10 days before the event is set to take place. But this task will only exist for some types of events. It will not exist for my virtual events or for my, what was the other one? Breakfast. All right. So that is everything having to do with tasks that I wanted to review. So let's go back to settings. Okay. The next feature at your disposal that I think of as an organizational tool is the one you'll find right here. It's Fiscal Periods. This is most useful to you if you would like to run advanced reports specifically having to do with fiscal periods, or else if you'd like to assign sales goals to a user based on fiscal period. I've already filled in my dates here, but if you want, what you could do is define what's the start and end date of each period. Mine just happens to coincide with the calendar year. Oh, let's go forward a year. Oh, there we go. So I could choose the end date. Maybe it's going to be the 31st. And you could use this autofill periods, right? And that'll just save you a little bit of time. You also have the option to click 13 periods per year in case your business operates with 13 fiscal periods. And just always remember to click save at the bottom when you're done. And fiscal periods work hand in hand with the next feature we're going to talk about, which are your sales goals. So if you're looking at settings, you'll notice you have the option here for sales performance, goals, and reporting. And from this page, you can set goals or objectives for individual event planners at your business by month, by quarter, by week that they can work towards. So if we're looking at this page, I like to move actually from the right of the screen to the left. So if we start on the right, here's where you can decide the time period over which you'd like to set goals for your users. So I like to keep mine monthly, but you could change it to fiscal periods, which will pull based on the information we've just entered on the page before. You could do it by quarter or by week. Next, if we're moving from right to left, you'll see there's an option to add and remove users. So it's not saying to add or remove users to Tripleseat. It's simply saying to add and remove users available to set sales goals for. So for instance, maybe most of my team is already set up with sales goals, but perhaps my two Patricks are moving out of their positions. They don't need goals any longer, so I'm just going to uncheck their names and update. In the middle here, you can navigate this page forwards and backwards in time. Let's see, we're in 2022, so this looks fine because this corresponds with the present. And then on the left, you're going to find a drop-down with the name of a particular user, right? So it's currently set to Alex, but maybe I want to set some goals for Allison Jones. When I select her name, in the main section of the screen, I'm going to see the Trattoria, my bagel shop, my fondue shop, and a creperie. These are my 4 businesses that have Tripleseat licenses that live in Tripleseat. And I can set a goal for Allison at each of these 4 locations where she has access. So maybe for the month of September, right, she needs 1,500, 2,000, 100, right? Maybe I'm only going to set goals for her at 2 of my businesses. 3,000. And then maybe the bagel business is like more of a flat seasonality to it. Right. And then you just click Save Goals at the bottom. Another nice thing with your sales goals is if you're looking at a particular user, you can click on the tab that says Progress Report. And you're going to see all of the users. Let's go forward to September. You're going to see all of the users at your venues with their goals, their cumulative goals on the right here. So maybe they have goals set for 2 different businesses, and you'll see their progress against that. So that would be the actual sales for events that have a status of definite or closed for the month in question. So if she had 3 definite events booked in September, the actuals for those 3 definite events would appear here. And I'll go back to set goals. The other nice thing about setting goals is that when you configure these for your team, when they sign into Tripleseat, the first place they go on the dashboard, I'm just going to click dashboard really quickly, right? They're going to see their goals here along with their progress to it. And the nice thing, you'll notice this 3,000 and change number, it's in blue. So if I click on that number, it's actually going to generate a report with information about the 2 events contributing to the number that they see on the dashboard. So it's just a nice way that they can kind of stay on top of their sales pipeline. Cool. So back to settings. We're going to pivot to the next portion or next theme within today's training, and that has to do with your billing configurations in Tripleseat. These are really important because they determine how the cost of your events tally up. And you really want this to be accurate so you can get paid what you need to get paid, and you can report on your taxes that you in turn need to report on and pay out. So here we are back in settings, and we're scrolling down to the section that says documents and menus, because all of the features relating to billing are going to live here. There are 3 features we're going to talk about. Your pick list items, those are the actual services and items that you charge your guest. Billing details are taxes and fees that apply on top of items, but they also add cost to your events. And your menu item categories, that's the glue that holds everything together. The category of a pick list item informs which taxes and fees should get tallied up per that item. So we're going to start actually by clicking onto billing details. And here you're going to see any existing taxes and fees that already, appear in your Tripleseat. And let's pretend you need to add a new billing detail. Perhaps you would like to implement a credit card processing fee. So you're going to click this new document billing in the upper right. And here's where we can set up that credit card transaction fee. Paste. If you want to give an internal name for a billing detail, sometimes people like to put the initials of the businesses where it exists. I'm just going to keep it the same. Maybe this needs to be 3%. You'll notice there's the checkbox right here that says inclusive. Now, most people do not have this selected, right? It looks exactly as this page looks now. If you're in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, or else if you price out your items so the price you advertise to your guest already includes taxes and fees, then you would click the checkbox, because instead of adding 3% on top of a pick list item and adding that cost to the event, it would back out the price. So like if the advertised cost was $100, for instance, and the billing detail was inclusive, the grand total would still be 100, and 3% would like back out from the 100, if that makes sense. This is really, again, only if you're someplace where your advertised pricing includes taxes and fees. So in the United States, most people have it unselected. Next, in the lower portion of the screen, here's where you can check off which locations should this transaction fee exist for. And any location that is selected that does not have an overriding value is going to pull the percentage rate from above where it says default value. If this were more of a tax, and maybe your businesses had different tax rates, what you could do is you could put an overriding value, right? Maybe at these 2 businesses at 7 and 8% instead of 3. When you create documents at either the bagel shop or the fondue shop, those documents would pull the tax rate defined in the overriding value field. And lastly, there's a section for associated billing details. So if this transaction fee needs to apply on top of any other taxes and fees, you would check them off here. In this case, I actually want my transaction fee to apply on top of all charges for my event, so I'm going to select all billing details. I'm going to click create. Excellent. So now we have a new credit card transaction fee. And we're going to go back to settings because we need to make a few more changes in order for this to work the way we need it to on future events. So we're scrolling back down to documents and menus. And next, we're going to talk about menu item categories. Your menu item categories are reportable buckets, so you can report on all of your food items, your beverage items, and the category is something that you assign to an individual pick list item. So all charges have a certain category, and the category is reportable. It appears in the billing widget. And also, let's click into alcoholic beverage, for instance. all pick list items of a certain category are going to default to include the billing details selected here. So because I want pick list items that have a category of alcohol to be subject to credit card charge, I'm going to check off credit card transaction fee. And whenever you add a new billing detail, you always want to come in and update your menu item categories so they are accurate. I'm actually just gonna finish this out. Doesn't usually take too long because I know at a glance everything needs this credit card transaction fee. Cool. And lastly, we're going to go to settings and we're going to click on pick lists because your pick lists are the individual items that you would add onto the documents for your guests for them to pay. So here we can see an overview of all pick lists in your Tripleseat site. A nice option are these intersecting arrows. You can use these to organize the order of your pick list as you'd like. And that's really helpful if you work at a larger venue. It's just to stay organized. Another feature available, say for instance, you're still going to offer a lot of the same selections from your a la carte dinner menu, but pricing is going up in like the next quarter, the next financial quarter. So you just want to start building out your menu. Instead of creating a new pick list from scratch, you can use the gear icon to the right and click on copy. I think it goes to the bottom, right? And then at the bottom, you'll find a copy that includes all items on the original pick list. And you can work from that copy and customize the pricing as you need. So what we're going to do, we're going to click the gear icon and hit edit. There are going to be a few changes I make here. First, I'm going to change the title. Then I need to select what locations these items are available at. So maybe these are only available at my trattoria. And then in the main section of the page, you'll see individual line items that describe the items that you're selling to your guest, right? Each pick list item has a quantity field, a description, and an individual item price. Here's where I could come through and say, okay, maybe this is going to $5, maybe this is going to $18, right? And you could come through and adjust your pricing as you need. You'll notice in the middle section of this page is an area called line items. And these are actually tools that can be really helpful if you're making big changes to your pick lists. What I actually use the most is this one that says expand all. I like it because it will expand each pick list item so I can see a little bit more information. For instance, now what I can see for each of my pick list items is the category dropdown assigned to that item. So for instance, this shrimp item has a category of food. So it informs which taxes and fees are going to get tallied up. Because I just updated my menu item category, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the drop down up top because I want to refresh all of these items so they look to settings, menu item categories, and they add the credit card transaction fee. And that will update all items on the page at once so you don't have to go through and check off transaction fee for every single item. Another option is you can do the mass assign to billing details instead, right? If all of these items needed alcohol tax, I could just click alcohol tax or unclick. All right, I'm going to scroll on down to the bottom because perhaps in addition to adjusting existing items, I also need to add some new ones. I can add new items to a pick list at the very bottom of the page underneath this gray line. So for instance, maybe I'm adding a new dessert, Italian bakery platter. Oh, that sounds so good. I want this to be in bold. And underneath, maybe that comes with cannoli, lobster tails, rainbow cookies. Maybe that's like $6, $7. And really important here, guys, is this button that says plus add. You have to click that to push it above the gray line where it will be like savable. So if I click save, right, this item is going to appear. If I try to click save, right, and there's an item underneath the gray line, that's not in the part of the page where edits can be captured. So you always want to click plus add to push it up on the page. You can also drag and drop your new pick list items using the intersecting arrows. That is the scoop on pick lists. Maybe I'm just gonna drag it to the top because maybe I expect this to be my best selling item. I'm just collapsing all of those items. I'm going to click save at the bottom. All right, excellent. So we're gonna go back to settings and we're gonna dive into document customizations. There are a lot of things you can do with your docs in Tripleseat. And so if you're in settings, you're going to scroll on down to documents and menus, and you're going to click documents. From this page, you can see the two components that contribute to documents in Tripleseat, where you see contract and event order. This is your document template. It contains the core text box and pick list fields that are editable when you create documents. So for instance, that's where your terms live, your food and beverage pick list sections, as well as maybe you have kitchen notes or a timeline text box note that you edit on an event by event basis. Those live here. Underneath your document template are layouts. So these pull the fields from your template, and this is where you can arrange how they appear to your guest or to your team internally, what the header looks like, what information from the template shows up. So we're going to start by clicking into the contract and event order. And you'll know you're in the right place because in the upper left it says Save Template. And we're going to start scrolling down, and you'll notice, right, this contact info section, this is a text box. And you'll notice that there are some merge fields, and I can tell they're merge fields because of the perforated blue line around the text. For instance, maybe instead of having my sales manager's phone number appear in the right column here, I want it to be the phone number for the business of the restaurant. So to add a merge field, you want to right click. I'm going to go to my location fields folder. And I'm going to scroll on down until I find location phone number, because in that case, that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm going to highlight that field, and I just did Command B to unbold it. But you can also use this tool in the toolbar. Sorry, guys, 1 second. Excellent. Anytime you make an edit, always remember to click Save Template. And we're going to scroll on down. Maybe most of these fields I want to leave blank because unless there are special instructions, I don't need any text to appear in this field. Then I'm going to scroll on down. And you'll notice room rental, food and beverage look different. And the reason is these are your pick list sections, your pick list fields. And a nice feature available, especially if you work at a larger venue, you can restrict which pick lists appear in which pick list field. So for instance, maybe I only want my food pick list to be selectable in food. What I can do is scroll through this column here, restrict to these pick lists. And I can check off, maybe, okay, that looks like all of my food items. I'm going to click Save Template. Going forward, if I click Add from Pick List in the food section of my documents, I would only see the pick list checked off in this column right here, this section. If you have a charge that you always include on docs to your guests, maybe you always require an additional bartender or you always offer complimentary valet, instead of adding that to your documents for every single event, you can set that charge to appear here by default. So maybe complimentary coat check. Entry. One word. I don't think so. I'm going to give this a category. Miscellaneous. It's actually going to be, there's going to be no cost, but I'm going to click plus add. And now every time I create documents, these 3 items will appear in my AV and other items section by default. Right. I'm going to keep scrolling down. Say, for instance, you would like to add a new text box in which you can detail out notes. You can create that field in your template in your left sidebar underneath fields. A lot of people write into support because maybe they want a timeline field. So you would just drag and drop from the left. You want to give your new field a name. And you can add text to appear by default if you would like. Maybe if I right click, you'll notice you have the option to drop in a table to help keep your formatting really crisp. Time task. Maybe I want that to be in bold. And perhaps I want this entire row to have a nice background color. If I right click again, you'll notice there's a cell option. And I'm simply going to go to cell properties. I'm going to go to advanced. Maybe I want my background color. I could either use this color selector, or if you know the hex code, just type it out. And then maybe I also want, instead of those being left justified, I can use the formats drop down to center those. And then maybe I want there to be, I'm going to go to table properties now because I want to put in a really thin border around the entire table. Although that messed up my alignment. That's align, center, boom. And I'm going to click, I'd click save again, but I'm going to do it at the end because there are 2 more things I want to talk about in your document template. The first is your billing widget. So right, this is the calculator that tallies up the cost of your events. So it's really important. And in settings, it looks like this. Now, remember how we added a new credit card transaction fee? Events will only know to count up that transaction fee if you make it as a line in your billing widget. And the best way to do that is to do it here in settings so it appears by default. So in order to add that transaction fee, I'm using this drop down, add a row, and I'm clicking billing item. In the amount field, I'm setting that up at 1%. And the reason is if you ever have different tax rates at different Tripleseat locations, this is simply going to look to settings to pull the percentage amount based on the location where the event is taking place. And then so from here, I clicked on the 3 dots because it's really important that I use this drop down, apply to billing detail, to select credit card transaction fee. The reason this matters is now it will look to all Picklist items that are tagged with credit card transaction fee. And I'd be able to report on my transaction fee totals because any amount in this field here is tied to that transaction fee and setting. So I could run a report really quickly to find out, what are my transaction fees for the month of September if I needed to. So that's done. Another new feature that I did want to socialize is if you use this add a field dropdown, you can now select room rental. So this would be nice. Previously on a given event, there was that rental fee field, which just acted like a placeholder. You could use rental fee as a merge field, and you could include it in reports, but it wouldn't actually add cost to your events. Now, if you add this room rental line right here, say you enter like $500 in the rental fee field when you create a new event. Why don't I just show you guys? I'm going to click new event and I'm going to open it in another tab. So the field I'm talking about is right here. It says rental fee. If I were to set $500 and I were to create docs using my new document set or my updated document set, the rental fee in the billing widget would act like a food and beverage minimum and add cost to the event. So it's just a nice option available for you if you're always charging a room rental to your guest. Maybe I need my room rental to be subject to sales tax and credit card transaction fee. And finally, really important here are your terms and conditions. We get this question a lot. How can I update my terms and conditions? And this field lives in your document template. So this is where you're going to want to come to change out the verbiage. So, right, maybe that you have a COVID policy, or all last minute cancellations are subject to a $50 penalty fee, something like that. Then anytime you make your changes, you're just going to click Save Template. Excellent. So we've done a few things. Most important, well, I guess they're all important, but in this case, adding this new timeline, even though we've created that as a field here in the template, it's not going to pull onto your BEO, onto any of your layouts unless you update those as well. So perhaps I do want my timeline to show on my banquet and event order. So here on the layout, it looks a bit different from the template. It looks more like what you're familiar with, that customer facing or internal facing document. You know you're in the right place because it says layout in the upper left. And you have a very similar navigation panel on the left, or a toolbar. And you want to scroll down. And where it says layout items, here are all of the core fields from your template that you can make available to show on the BEO. So for instance, I find my new timeline field. I can drag and drop it on the page. And maybe I want this to have a header. So if I click onto timeline, it's going to show this editing bar in the lower section of the page. And that's where I'm checking off that, yes, I'd like to make a header for this field. Rather than trying to create a header from scratch, the easiest way to do that is to actually click into a header for another section. Then click into the editing section, the editing portion in the lower portion of your screen. I'm just highlighting and copying, so Command C. Again, I'm on a Mac. And then I'm going to click back into header for my timeline, paste it in. And I could click Save Layout. Perhaps I also want to make some changes to my contract. I can simply, from this left side section, select contract to go to that contract layout. Let's see. So I'm going to scroll on down the page. Maybe in the past I wanted this 2-column setup, but I just want to change the order of items within it. So for instance, I want my food pick list items to appear in the 2-column container. What I can do is I'm going to drag food. I'm clicking on this intersecting arrow. And I don't know if you guys could see that. Let's push it out and do it again. So I just dragged it. And then when this drop here to add to container appears kind of with the yellow background, that's when I drop it to drop it in. Maybe I want my beverage pick list items to be on the left. Maybe I want my setup special instructions to be on the right. You can scroll on down. Perhaps you are always working with folks who want to provide you need two client signatures. What you can do is you can add another e-signature box by scrolling down in your left sidebar. And here you're going to find, where is it? The signature design element. And again, you just want to drag and drop on the page, and that will add another place for your guests to sign electronically. If you click on that signature element, you'll find that you can customize the text, agreement, maybe I want to add a period. And then you'll also notice there's an option to make this signable only by staff. So if you need to countersign documents, checking off this box is a good option, because if you're the guest would not be able to sign that. You would be the only person who could sign in that section. But in this case, I do want it to be signable from a client's end. And I'm just gonna try to drag and drop it into this column, container. I want that one to be on top. And if I click into the one above, I can just, instead of requesting initials, right, I can make it match a bit more. Another thing that you can add is a gratuity selector. So say you want your guests to be able to choose their own gratuity percentage amount. In your design element section, you can drag your gratuity selector if you do not have one already. I like to put it on the contract or the invoice because it can only live on one of your layouts. And I like to put it kind of near the estimated billing section. Again, you'll notice if you click onto that field, the entire box will have that red dotted line, and you'll have an editing bar appear in the lower portion of the screen. Maybe I want to add some default options for 18, 20, and 22%. I can allow my guests to add a custom amount, or I can uncheck that box. And I also like to check the box apply automatically. So that means as soon as they click it, it will adjust the financials. You don't have to approve the gratuity amount. And that will work only if you have a line in your billing widget called gratuity, because it's going to look for any pick list items tagged with gratuity and apply 18, 20, or 22% on those items. All right. The last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to go to a kitchen sheet or some internal facing document. You'll notice here that your pick list sections look different. They don't include pricing. So if you click on any pick list field in a layout, right, there are a few ways you can customize what information appears. For instance, maybe you want your kitchen team to see both the short and long description. In the editing bar, you'll notice this description preference is set to both, whereas in the other, in the contract, it was just set to normal. I want it to say both, and I want my beverage to match. What I also want to do here is I like how the price is hidden, right? Because maybe my kitchen team, they just need to focus on making the food. So it just keeps it a bit cleaner. All right. Not seeing any questions. I know that was a really deep dive, but again, if we're just in settings documents, your BEO, contract, invoice, kitchen sheet, etc., those are your layouts. Those pull information from the template above based on what's set to appear there. Another thing is any change you make to a layout, like we've just performed, those will apply to documents that have already been created. Whereas if you're just changing a few clauses of your terms and conditions, or you're making changes to your billing widget in your document template, that will only impact the documents that you create going forward. Cool. All right. The last tool, the last feature to review here in settings, we're scrolling on down to documents and menus. And next we're going to talk about your content templates. I love this feature. I think it's super helpful, especially if you accommodate a lot of different type of private events. So content templates are plugin versions of language or images that you can drop into a document, an events documents on a case-by-case basis. For instance, some people, instead of having their terms and conditions live in the document template where we were just reviewing, what they do instead is they make a folder like this, a content template folder. Let's click edit. And here they can set up different versions of their terms, their policies, based on the type of event. So maybe you have different policies by size. Maybe you have different policies if it's a wedding versus if it's like a corporate event. You can set up and customize those content templates here with the verbiage that you need to appear. Entry without proof of, maybe there's a typo or something you need to fix. You can just adjust the text. You'll have the same styling tools available to you in your documents themselves. So for instance, if I want to go through, I can come in and highlight and bold my policy sections, or I could just do a keyboard shortcut. I could go through and update all of that, and I could click save at the bottom. Then what I could do is on an event, and I could use the templates drop down, and it would plug in either version of my terms here. In addition to terms and conditions, let me go back to settings, content templates. Another thing that I see people do is maybe they have different setup types. Maybe your venue can be configured in different ways, and you want to be able to drop in like a floor plan of how your venue looks in that configuration into the documents of an event just to make it look really professional. What you can do is you can create a content template, and you can just add an image. It doesn't even have to be text. And then you can drop in this information on an event. So let's actually just illustrate how that could look. I just happen to have a recently viewed wedding in my left sidebar. If I go to my docs tab, I could make edits using the contract and event order button. Let's go to my setup section. Here in setup, in order to plug in my setup content template, I'm going to use this drop down. There I can find my folder for setup types. And I will quickly insert the image. Maybe I want to just make it a bit smaller. And let's see, let's go to my BEO. Okay, so I need to reduce the size of that image a little more because it's exceeding the right-hand margin. Let's make it just a little bit smaller so you can still see it, but and I'm just going to refresh. And now it lives more concisely, or it fits better into the margins available. So again, those were your content templates, which live here. Okay, awesome. That was a lot of content to digest. I'm still not seeing any questions, but that concludes everything I wanted to present. So if you do have any outstanding questions, please submit those. But yeah, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate your attendance, and I hope it was helpful. And then even if you don't have a question in this exact moment, if you send an email to support@tripleseat.com later on when it comes to you, we'd be happy to discuss that more, provide an answer, or if you have like a conversation, you're welcome to call in as well. All right, thank you so much again. I'm going to give it 1 or 2 minutes. All right. I think I'm not seeing any questions, so have a great rest of your day and let us know if something comes up. Thank you. Bye.